Is it a coin flip for the House at this point, or is the outcome more obvious?
No, it truly is a coin flip for the House as well. While in the Senate, we do believe that Republicans are favored to take control next year, the House is a lot murkier. And that's because currently Republicans have an incredibly narrow 4-seat majority right now. And the way we see it with our individual race ratings, neither party is favored in the 218 seats they would need for a majority. So it's going to come down to the couple dozen seats that we have rated as toss-ups right now, which are spread across the country and largely do not overlap with the presidential battleground map.
I'm so glad you said that, Erin, because I want you to take us by the hand and walk us through election night, and I'm guessing the day after the election as well. People will be obsessing over the 7 swing states the night of November 5th. You're going to be looking at a different map here with, I'm assuming, a very close eye on states like New York and California. What will the early evening do to draw your attention, and how long will it be before we know which party controls the House?
Honestly, if it takes a couple of days to call the House, I would be pleased with that. I think at this rate, it might take several days, if not more than 1 week. And that's because a lot of the House battleground is, like you said, in California and in these Western states that are both behind time zone wise, but also take longer to count their ballots. So there were races in California last cycle that took days, weeks to call. And if the majority is coming down to a single seat or 2 or 3, it might take a really long time for us to actually know who's in control of the House in 2025. But the places I'll be paying closest attention to are, first of all, California, which is home to 5 toss-up seats currently. So that's about a fifth of our toss-up column is in California alone. We also have a couple of seats in New York that we're closely watching, that Republicans hold, and also seats across Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Arizona that we're paying close attention to as well. But if you also look at our toss-up column, you'll see that it's pretty evenly split between the two parties. Democrats control a couple fewer seats than Republicans do that are in the toss-up column, but it is fairly evenly divided.
Well, so as we consider New York as a case study, Erin, Donald Trump is going to be there this weekend. On Sunday, he's holding a massive rally at Madison Square Garden. And a lot of people have asked, well, why? And maybe the why is open to interpretation. But is it possible part of the why is to boost those House Republicans who are trying to hold on to those competitive seats? Does it have that effect?
You know, I don't know. I think the why, like you said, is open to interpretation, and we can speculate about that. I think it is true, however, that Trump's performance in New York, while he's not going to carry the state, certainly, if he does a little bit better than he did in 2020, that could really help Republicans' prospects in the competitive House races there. Currently, Republicans are defending around 4 highly competitive House races, and they're spread across the state. There's one on Long Island, one in the Hudson Valley, 2 further upstate. So they don't exactly overlap with Manhattan, but the increased attention on New York, and if Trump is able to boost his numbers a little bit there, that could then help these Republicans win re-election, because all 4 of them are running in districts that Biden won in 2020. Now, it's not clear that Harris will necessarily actually win all of these districts. Some of them, one of them, Biden only won by a couple of points, so I wouldn't be surprised if Trump carries it in 2024. However, there are seats like Anthony D'Esposito's seat on Long Island that Biden won by 14 points, that even if Harris does significantly worse than he did, she's probably still going to carry it by a couple of points, and that's going to make it difficult for these Republican incumbents to overperform Trump.
To what extent is Donald Trump's rhetoric and some of the criticism that he's been hearing, whether he's talking about Arnold Palmer or I don't even know where to go from there, describing the first lady or the vice president in this case and the second gentleman in words that I can't use on the air. Is there a concern among frontline Republicans in Biden-friendly districts that this could mean a loss for them?
You know, I think there's always going to be concern, because for most of these frontline Republicans, they are going to have to run ahead of Trump if they want to win re-election. And that's a task that they have known they would have to complete all cycle. And so they've been navigating all of Trump's myriad of controversies and various legal cases and all of that as well. I do think that from what we're seeing in the polls, Trump is basically matching his 2020 share of the vote, at least in battleground states. And so it's not like he is doing any worse than he did. In fact, you know, there's, of course, concern that if polls undercount Trump's support again, he might do even better than he did in 2020. And so I don't think Republicans are particularly concerned right now about Trump being a drag on the top of the ticket, but I think he has been a drag on many of these Republicans all cycle just by nature of their districts and the fact that he's going to lose them.
Erin, I also want to talk about a couple of Senate races because I was struck by a trio of polls that have come out of Emerson College in the last day or two. In Wisconsin, the incumbent Democrat, Tammy Baldwin, 48, also the number her Republican challenger, Mr. Hovde, is getting. In Pennsylvania, Bob Casey, the incumbent Democrat, at 47. Dave McCormick, his Republican challenger, at 46. In Texas, Republican Ted Cruz, 48. Colin Allred, his Democratic challenger, 47%. It feels like all of these, too, are a coin flip. Erin, if you're looking at the picture widely for incumbents in this cycle, how does that kind of dictate the way you think ultimately these races could go?
Yeah, so in the Senate races, Democrats have had the difficulty of running in states that are either really competitive at the presidential level, places like Michigan and Pennsylvania, or places where Trump is going to win, places like Ohio and Montana. So they've been in a much more difficult position than Republicans this cycle. There's also just more Democrats up for re-election in the Senate. But I will say that I'm not too surprised by the fact that we've seen some of these Senate races tighten, because we're expecting them to mostly fall in line with where we see the presidential race play out in these races. Senators, unlike House members, do have stronger individual brands and have the ability to outrun the top of the ticket in some places for some senators, but it is still a difficult thing to do. In 2020, Susan Collins was the only senator up for re-election who won in a state that the opposing party, Democrats, carried. And so this is a really tough task for senators to pull off, and it's not surprising that we're seeing the races tighten in these battleground states. In Texas, I think that poll is probably a little bit rosy for Colin Allred, the Democrat there, and I think that's because we still expect Trump to win Texas by several points, probably similar to his 2020 margin of about 5.5 points. And so I think that Allred is probably in a good position to overperform Harris in Texas. The question is, how much can he overperform? If he's only overperforming by a couple of points, that may not be enough to close the gap there.
Why do you expect the tightening that we're seeing here, Erin, where we're talking about a tied presidential race, a one-point race in a lot of these very closely contested Senate races that Kailey was referring to? Is it just more people paying attention late in the game?
I think it's more people paying attention. It's also the fact that for a lot of these Democratic senators, they had a really significant financial advantage over their Republican opponents from the beginning of the cycle. So they were able to go up on TV and start airing ads much earlier than a lot of their Republican opponents. Now we're at the point where all of the super PACs have gotten involved and these Republicans have gotten a boost on the airwaves. And so that has helped them as well. And they're also becoming better known. As a challenger candidate, you're not starting with much name ID, if any at all. And so it takes a little bit to bring your numbers to where you would expect a generic candidate to be at in your state.